Hello Kerbal, and welcome to this tutorial on how to get to Dres. And where is Dres? There it is. I will show you a simple tutorial on how to get to Dres the easy way, without having to use all those tools like websites or phase angles or anything else like that. We will just be playing the game and we'll be using the maneuver node system within the game to help you get this inclination to this planet, which has an high inclination and is quite far away and is quite small, which means its gravity is quite low, so it's going to be harder to get into orbit. Okay, so let's get on with it. Let's go straight to the VAB and let's engineer a rocket to start off with. Right, here we are in the VAB and we want to build a lander which can land on Dres and return safely. Now, to make it easier, I suggest you use the command pod Mark 1 because it only holds one Kerbal. It's small, it's light, that means your rocket doesn't have to be so big, and it doesn't matter if you lose one Kerbal. It's much less trouble saying to one set of Kerbal parents that, oh sorry, your Kerbal was lost, rather than telling, well, 3 sets of parents. So anyway, first off you need a parachute on the top so they can return safely. Second thing you need in aerodynamics is the small heat shield. Place him on the bottom there, and you need some way of powering the spacecraft. So I suggest you go to Utility, find the small photovoltaic panels, put symmetry to 2 and put them on the side as such there. Make sure you don't get in front of the capsule hatch, otherwise your Kerbal will not be able to descend to the surface of Dres. Right, that's the capsule, that's what we're going to use to return and enter the atmosphere Kerbin with. But now we need a decoupler. And now we can start building our lander of the rocket. Okay, if we go to fuel tanks, use the FLT 400. Then we want some decouplers because we're going to put some more fuel tanks on the outside. Put symmetry to 4 this time. And try to line them up quite nicely like that. And again, go back to the fuel tanks and use the FLT 400 fuel tanks. Right, that fuel in these outer tanks aren't attached to the fuel in the center tank, so what you need is the external fuel duct, and you want to put it on the outer tank. I suggest putting it perhaps in the inside by here, and then put it on that center tank there like that. It looks quite neat like that rather than having to come out the side. Right, that's the fuel tanks and everything. We need an engine, and I suggest using the LV99 engine and just use one. Why? Because it's much more fuel efficient. If you put them on the outside engines, you'd only get 2,618 delta V. If you put it on the center one, you get over 5,000. That's not true. If we had the fuel ducts coming from the center tank to the outer tanks, you'd have more delta V than that. However, it would be slightly less than just having the single engine in the middle. And the reason is because once we're returning from Dres, and once these tanks are empty, we can jettison them, and then we'll have less weight, dead weight around with us. So that means we have more delta V for return. Okay, this is going to be the lander, so we need 2 things. From Utility, we need a ladder. Though you may not have to use it, I think it would be quite handy. And make sure symmetry is set to 1. Excuse the cough, and make sure the ladder goes down to the bottom. Next thing you need is some landing legs. These LT1 landing legs should be fine for our purposes. Again, set it to 4 and check to see if they extend down and don't allow the engine to be hit the surface of the planet. Okay, so that's our lander setup. Not quite. We need some batteries to provide power. So these small ones will do. Symmetry to 2 this time. Just put it on the side of the rocket there, and that should provide us with enough power for our mission. Now we need the transfer stage. This is the lander. We need a stage now that'll transfer it to Dres after we get into orbit. So to do this, we need another decoupler, TR18A. Next, I suggest use this Rockmux brand adapter. Click on it, press the A or D key to flip it upside down, place it on such like that. Next, you want the Kerbal ADTP23 adapter. And that is so we can use the larger fuel tanks. Okay, if we go to the fuel tanks, Kerbal S37300, place them under there. And I suggest you put another one under there, because it's going to take a lot of fuel. However, the more the merrier, I suppose. Now, what you need is an engine for that. Right, a lot of people would say perhaps the mainsail or the skipper, but if you want to know the efficiency of an engine, just have a look at the engine ISP, and particularly the one in vacuum. See, 310 for the mainsail, 320 for the skipper, but I suggest using this one, the Rhino, which gives you 340. The higher the number, the more efficient the engine. So let's select him, put him on the bottom here, and hey presto, we've got our transfer stage. Now there's a problem with this. This is going to be quite heavy and hard to turn. The capsule provides torque in a way of rotating it, but it's still going to be quite difficult to turn. So there's a little trick. First off, you need some RCS fuel tanks. So click these ones, the monopropellant tank. You've got smaller ones and you've got inline ones, but there's a little trick I'm going to show you by here. Put symmetry to 4 and place them on here on the adapter. Now the adapter is really empty, so I wouldn't say this is cheating. You could say that this is where the RCS is stored. Now click the offset tool here, click on the RCS tank, use the red arrow here or whatever color you've got and push it until it disappears within the rocket. Hey presto, you've got RCS tanks within the adapter. Okay, now those RCS tanks are no use unless we got RCS thrusters. So let's put some of these thruster blocks on there. Now what you want is to center the camera on this center of mass, which can be brought up with this button. What you want is to place the RCS thrusters, 2 sets of them in symmetry 4, at equal distance. That way they'll act like a lever, with this being the center, so when you rotate, this point should not turn. However, the rocket will be able to turn on that point. It's the most efficient way of rotating a rocket. Put it that way, for simple explanations. Okay, now for the launcher. And we're going to pull out all the stops. Or before we do the launcher, an aerodynamic shell. Okay, use the 3.75 meter one, because it's for a large rocket. And then you instantly have to build it. You can build it any way you want, you can make any weird shapes you want. I like to hug it close to the rocket we've got here. And a bit further up. Okay, yeah, let's get a nice point on the top here. Okay, that aerodynamic shell will help protect your rocket against, well, the aerodynamic forces of the Kerbin's atmosphere, because it matters now when you're launching up into space. So it's one thing to think of. Right, and that aerodynamic shell is, no, I suppose it's staged in the correct area. Yeah, the staging when you're building this for the time being is fine in the order. I'll let you know on building this if there's something different. Okay, now go back to tanks because we need some more fuel. Now use Kerbal, the large monster tanks. I think these are the largest stock tanks you can have in the game. We want 2 of them, and we need an engine. And use the Mammoth. Now the thrust on this I think is the highest thrust engine. However, it's not the most efficient engine, but it is going to get us off the surface of Kerbin. Okay, now we have that. This is not going to be enough for us. 9,000. Just in case, we'll add some boosters. Right, I'm going to use a twin bore, but we need some side radial decouplers again. This time we need the large ones. Symmetry to 2, because we're going to set this as asparagus staging. I think down here is the best place to put them. Okay. So, it was in engines. Twin bore. Place them on the side if you can straight. And hey presto, done. Right, there's a couple of things we have to do. First thing I suggest is good structural. You need to make sure they're structurally sound on the rocket. So put it on that side there. Attach it on this side here. And to save spinning the rocket round, just attach it over on this side as well. And hey presto, copied. Okay. Now, that in itself is not going to be just enough. So I suggest you Alt copy. All you do is hold down Alt, hover the mouse over the decoupler, the hydraulic attachment manifold. Hold down Alt, press the mouse button, and you've copied the engine. And you want to put another set on the other side. And now this is going to be the basis of our asparagus staging. So let's split these decouplers, otherwise they're going to detach at the same time. Okay, if you're wondering what asparagus staging is, it's just a set of engines that are going to be feeding fuel to one set of engines, feeding fuel to the center of engines, so that every time a stage is lost, we lose weight, it becomes more efficient to fly your rocket because it's less weight on it, and you have full fuel tanks when they detach. And it's probably much better to show you while we're doing it rather than tell you. So while they're set up, go to external fuel duct. Alright, we need the first ones. They're going to decouple first. So fuel duct to that, to the second engine. And then the fuel duct from that one to the center engine. Okay, now our asparagus setup is correct. We have to set these up for decoupling, and they may hit our main rocket. So if you go to the engines, go to Separatrons, place one on the side, rotate it. So if I zoom in here, so you can see much better. Rotate it so the nozzle is pointing towards the rocket the main rocket. Then when this fires, it'll push the rocket away. But you need to make sure it's staged in the correct stage. So click it to open them up. Drag it to the ones we want, which is not that one. So they will fire when they decouple, pushing the rocket away. But that's going to just push it at a weird angle and may spin and hit our rocket. So you're going to Alt, copy. Alt, copy. Rotate, and repeat on the other side. Okay, that's set up. We need to do some more on this side. And don't forget to stage them correctly. No, not that one. That one there. Right, they're set up. The only thing left to do, or the two things left to do, go to aerodynamics. We need a nose cone, protective nose cone, Mark 7, for these outer rockets. We need some deluxe winglets. This will help with control. Okay, I suggest you place two on both of the outer boosters. And then set 4 on the inner rocket. This will give you extra control when launching up. just in case you're going to go out of control. Right. And for extra control, I suppose what we could do, if you're worried, because this is going to be a big rocket, it's going to be hard to control. Again, get some more propellant tanks, monopropellant, place them in there as such, and some more RCS control. Now the center mass is here. When these go detached, center mass is going to go up a bit. So I'm going to put 4 up there. And then 4 down here, just behind this rocket. Make sure symmetry is set to 4. And you have to be careful, because if you select a part, you've got symmetry to set to 4, you hover over a part with a symmetry to 2, it automatically changes symmetry to 2. So keep an eye on that. You always have to change it. Okay, that is our rocket. There's one last thing I almost forgot. Launch stability enhancers. And I think that should do for us. Just make sure that these are staged correctly. In fact, we have a miss stage. Our main rocket is not firing when the clamps are released and the other engines are firing. Okay, so that decouples. To that point, hopefully we should be in space by then. Okay, and what should we call this? We'll call this Dres it up. We are going to Dres. Save that, just in case you need to come back and alter your design. And just double check everything here. We have over 10,000 meters per second. That should be enough for our mission. If not, I'll have to come back and record this again. So let's go to the launch pad and to Dres. Right guys, I made a quick mistake, easy to do. I forgot to put the decoupler on there. So if you go and select the fairing, take that off the rocket, and go to structural, you need the TR38 decoupler. Place that under the rocket and place your rocket back in place. And you may have to rebuild the fairing, but that's easy enough. Oh, and one more thing. If you find your rocket is wobbling, select your struct. Symmetry to 4 again. And it may be because there is no support for this rocket, for the top lander. So place the struts on there as such, and it should help reduce the wobbling. Any other problems that appear on this rocket, I'll leave to you guys to engineer and figure out yourself, because this is in fact a tutorial on how to get to Dres. So here we go to the launch pad, save and launch. Okay, here we are on the launch pad, ready to go. Jebediah in the cockpit seat. That means this is going to be a successful mission. And so, first things first, engage your SES, Z to full thrust, and launch. I will not tell you how to get into orbit, there is a separate tutorial for that, so I will meet you up in orbit. Okay, so here we are in orbit, and if I go to map view, you can see it's not a perfect 100km orbit. It's not a 100km orbit. All you need is an orbit to get into space, so it doesn't matter about your orbit height at the time being. But what does matter is that we're going to Dres. Okay, first things first. If I zoom out, and if we click on Dres, set as target. Now, one thing to note with Dres, it's in a highly inclination orbit, high inclination orbit, which means it's not on the same plane as the planets here. You see, most of the planets are on the same orbit, except for Moho is a slight angle, Dres is at an angle, and also Ilu is at an angle or inclination. And what we want to do is first we need to get out to the sphere of influence of Kerbin to get into the same orbit as Kerbin, and then we can do something about that inclination. So first things first, let's get away from Kerbin. Now, one thing to know, if you want to increase your orbit, you want to thrust on this side of the planet in relation to Kerbin. That means your orbit will rise in relation to the other planets. If you want to descend, say like you want to go to Moho or Eve, then you thrust on this side of the planet. Okay, now let's head this way, zoom in. Now it's not going to be on exactly the rear end of the planet. What you want is sort of like a 45-degree angle. So if I maneuver by here, increase it, and you only want to increase it to until you just escape the orbit of Kerbin. There we go. That's only going to take 931 meters per second, but that is perfect for what we need. Okay, let's go ahead and burn that, and then I'll get back to you on how we can adjust our inclination. Okay, so now we're out of the sphere of influence of Kerbin. You can see our orbit is quite slightly higher than Kerbin, but that's okay. But what we are interested in is these, descending and ascending out. And if you read it, it says -5 degrees. And what that means is that's the inclination of the planet. So what we're going to do, if we set Kerbal as the center of the map by double clicking, we can zoom in, set maneuver node just on there. If we zoom out and we pull down, I think it's pulled down. Nope, it's the other way around. We missed it. Okay, slowly do again. You see there where they swap places? That's what you want. You want them 90 degrees, so slowly adjust them until you get there. N-A-N, which means not a number, which means it's absolute zero. So that's a perfect maneuver. All we have to do now is go and do this maneuver, and this time I'm going to cheat by using the onboard computer. And make sure we have enough monopropellant. Yes, we do. We'll go ahead, do this maneuver, and then I'll be back to then we can go and set our encounter with Dres. Okay, that maneuver is done. Now for the fun part. We should be at NAN or close to 0 is the best idea to get. What you want to do now is select anywhere on there, add a maneuver, and you want to zoom out, see your target Dres, increase your orbit so it gets close to Dres's orbit. You can go a bit over because it's higher orbit at one point than it is the other. Now you want to click in the center of the maneuver node, drag it across. Don't forget to increase and decrease the orbit. What you're looking for is an intercept, and you've got the two closest approach markers. They will get closer when you get closer to the intercept, and it looks like we got one by here. Okay, let's adjust our orbit because we don't need all that burning. And try again. This may take a bit of fiddling until you get the correct. Right, it says we're on a close approach. It may be that we're at a slight distance from it. Now for the fine tune. If you hover your mouse over the nav ball, plus and minus, and use the wheel of your mouse, you can adjust it very slightly. Okay, so we're not getting a full encounter. Let's check the nation. Oh, yep, there you go. Now, once you get your encounter, what you want to do click on, where is Dres? Click on Dres, focus view. Now when you zoom in, it should show your encounter. Now hopefully this may not be too hard for you. Click on the nav button on the maneuver node and use your mouse wheel again to adjust very slightly. Try to get closer, Dres. Now this may be a bit trickier, but you want to try to get as close to the planet as possible. Ooh. And what we got? We got a nice 400 kilometer periapsis. So we will use that and burn this maneuver. And again, I will be back with you after it's burnt. Okay, so now that we've time warped to the sphere of influence of Dres, which should give us a 3-minute head start, what we can do is focus in on Dres itself. Here's Dres. Just click on him, focus view, and if you zoom in, you can see where you're going to be flying past Dres. And what you want to do is click on the periapsis, add maneuver, and same with orbiting any old place. What you want to do is create an orbit, and I think we'll have a lower periapsis of perhaps about 50. Not that low. Okay, 42, I think that'll do. And the reason why we're going low is because we can create a we can lower the other side of the orbit after we get here, and it'll make landing a lot easier. It takes a lot less fuel for landing, and we won't be zooming towards the surface. Okay, so that maneuver node set created. Don't forget to press F5 for quick save, just in case something goes wrong. Okay, so it says we got 1600 meters per second. Yes, it's quite a lot. But if you look at my rocket fuel, we got over 5000 meters per second. Hopefully that's enough for us to get back safely, as well to land and take off and get back to Kerbin safely. So this maneuver node, it says 13 minutes, but I'm sure it's about 5 minutes. So what I'm going to do is 5 hours that side, which is 4 hours that side. I'm going to warp by here. That'll give us enough time limit for us to get to the planet and follow that maneuver node. Okay, so you want to be careful, especially by here, where we have to the fast forward. We got fast forward to maneuver node within 3 minutes, and we got fast forward to periapsis. I've clicked on that before, and it takes me to periapsis rather than the maneuver node, which doesn't give me enough time to do the burn. Okay, so what I want to try and do here, we'll have to manually fast forward. We got 2 minutes to maneuver node. We want to set ourselves on the maneuver node. It's going to be 5 minutes, so it's going to have to an aggressive burn. As you know, our design has a single rocket engine, which means that it's low thrust. However, it is the most efficient. It'll give us the highest delta V. So I'll go ahead and burn this, fast forward the video, and then we'll be back for landing. Okay, so now I've burnt for Dres orbit. You can see that we haven't got the orbit exactly as we want it. That's because we're traveling so fast past Dres that we needed to burn a little earlier. And that was my fault on my part. However, we did get into orbit, so I've killed this maneuver node. We got a periapsis of 51 kilometers. That will do. Now next we can plan our landing. Right then, to plan our landing, what we'll need to do is land on the day side, because we got 2 solar panels and we want to make sure our battery is charged while before we take off, because it's going to take a little while before we can get home. Okay, and also you see our orbit is at an inclination. Well, the best thing to do is to launch your craft on an equator, on an equatorial orbit. An equator orbit. An orbit the equator of the planet. And the best way to get and do that is to land on the equator And then you can take off from the equator and get your orbit correct. So what we're going to do by here, I'm going to add a maneuver here. No, perhaps on the other side. And I'm going to reduce our orbit. Whoa, a bit too much. So we come down on the equator on this side, because I believe the planet rotates this way. Let's do a quick fast forward on the time just to see which way the planet is orbiting. Yeah, we're out right. So we'll land here on the close to the equator. Now checking that, we were not too bad, a little bit more. Okay, that won't be too bad. We'll land on this little plateau by here, and we will, well, hopefully survive. Anyway, using the guidance computer again. Just to make things easy, as I told you, this is a tutorial on how to get to Dres and back. Now, coming down for landing on Dres, Dres has a lower gravity than the Man. However, you still have to watch your speed. So we're coming down over here. I think we'll aim for this plateau by here, perhaps. Hopefully it won't be too much slope. So what I'm going to do is start reducing our speed now. We're about 22 kilometers up, so note that. Our speed is over 300 meters per second. And reducing. What I want to do by here is reduce our speed completely as we're over a flatter area over here, rather than trying to land near this crater, and it looks a bit more hilly in this area. So going for the flatter spot would be make more sense. Let's orientate our spacecraft so our nav ball shows a nice orientation for landing for us. And let's kill it at about 40 meters per second. In fact, let's kill a bit more velocity here. So we're still heading in that direction. And we're dropped down to about 10 meters per second. Okay, it's not too bad. We're about 5 kilometers up, or let's have a look at the terrain altitude. If you do not have this mod to check your distance from the terrain, if you go into IVA mode, you've got the radar altimeter by here, which will tell you distance from the ground. However, I prefer to use a mod like this because it makes it much more visible when you're in this mode, in flight mode. Okay, so we're just over 3 kilometers up. Our speed is down to about 30 meters per second. Let's kill our velocity here, drop down a bit more. And we cannot time warp anymore since we're coming under that magic 5 kilometer mark. So what you can do is use physical time acceleration by pressing Alt and using the fast forward keys. As I said, this is a low gravity world, so coming down will take a lot longer. Right, there's our shadow now. I don't know if you can see it on YouTube, but it's appearing for me. Okay, now is the time you want to get the gentle, because as I said, this is low gravity. You're going to, well, career off into space, or if you go sideways you lose control, and when you come down for landing you'll tip over. And in fact, this looks like is this a slope, or we're in a gully look of it. The above view is quite deceptive in the fact that it's hard to determine if that terrain is hilly or not. So we're on a bit of a slope here, and not to worry, it's not too bad. I think we can survive this. And now it's just about feathering that throttle so that your speed is reducing, and you want to land at no faster than 5 meters per second. I find that 5 meters per second is the speed that anything over that you can potentially destroy parts of your rocket. And if these landing legs buckle or something, you could destroy your rocket engine. So we're at 10. Come on, quickly reduce. Okay, yeah. And kill! We have landed on Dres, ladies and gentlemen. The first Kerbal ever. In fact, this is my first time to land on Dres. So let's make the most of this. Get our Kerbal out on EVA. Get him down on the ladder. Press F5. Cannot quick save while Kerbal's on the ladder. Okay, fair enough. Press F5 now to quick save. So if anything dire happens, we can recover our Kerbal. Kill, plant flag. And what should we say? A tutorial to address. I hope how do you spell taught? I hope this tutorial has helped you to get to Dres. Okay, and that's our flag. We have succeeded. And indeed, we have succeeded. However, this tutorial has gone on for too long, so I will split this up into 2 tutorials, one to get to Dres and how to get back from Dres. So in the next part of this tutorial, we shall see us getting back. And it won't be long till it's out, so don't worry. If you enjoyed this video, why not hit that like button? And if you want to, why not subscribe, because there'll be more tutorials coming this way. And all that's left is, I'm Orbital, trust me, I'm an engineer. And we will get home.